Hello, this is Anthony Hobbs, and this is my review of the movie Terminator 2. Now, this is going to sound very bizarre. I can't quite believe it myself. But what happened was this. I did a test review of Terminator 2. Hey, that rhymes. And then afterwards, I was supposed to upload that and put it on the internet, but it didn't come out. The main one, there was a test one that was 4 minutes long, another longer one that was 14 minutes long. And the idea was to put the 14-minute one on YouTube. It didn't work. Instead, the small one that was 4 minutes long was put on. So I thought, what do I do now? Do a new one? What shall I do? And I thought, do a new one. Okay, so I'll basically say the stuff that I didn't say in the short one. The first thing is this. Terminator 2, oh yes, my favourite catchphrase of all time, hasta la vista, baby, is in that film. Not only is it one of my favourite parts of the movie, or is it I'm not sure what my favourite part is because there's so many favourite bits, but that's definitely one of my favourite bits of the film. And it means in Spanish, it means that's the way it's got to be. It's nothing personal, it's just this is the way it has to be. And the other thing was, oh yes, a bit of philosophy about the Skynet computer. Now I think in all four films they say Skynet becomes self-aware and turns against its masters and attempts to kill the whole human race. So in other words, the Skynet computer gets smart and becomes self-aware. It becomes alive. Or does it? Does it become alive, or is it just broken? Okay, I'll tell you what I mean. What I mean is, the Skynet computer, originally, before it became self-aware, it was programmed, a military computer with access to deadly weapons, including nuclear missiles. It's programmed to destroy the enemy, right? So could it have malfunctioned and that its circuits that enable it to identify the enemy went horribly wrong, and it identifies everyone as the enemy, everyone in general, so that's why it's trying to kill everyone. That's why it wants to exterminate the human race, because it thinks all humans are the enemy. So that's not self-aware, is it? No, that's not self-aware, it's just malfunctioning, you know. It's programmed to only kill the enemy, but it's malfunctioning and it's killing all humans in general. So it's not alive, is it? It's just broken, you know. But maybe it's one of those things where you, the viewer, make up your own mind. Did it physically come alive, or is it just broken, malfunctioning, and it can't tell who's its friend and who's the enemy? But they do say in one of the films that it becomes self-aware and it kills any threat to its power. So, is that alive, or it's just broken? Well, I personally think they mean it's malfunctioning, but you can make up your own mind. The other thing is, I think my favourite bit in the whole film is, my favourite bit, I suppose, yes. Well, no, not Hasta la Vista, but the other bit when he has a big fight with the T-101. He's almost dead, the T-101. He has a massive metal spike through him, pulls it out because his emergency batteries bring him back to life, the alternate power. And it's not good that he's been beaten up, no. But I like it because it's the determination, you know, the determination to win no matter what, against all odds, yes. And he uses his brains to beat the machine. It's clear the T-1000 is much physically stronger, so he uses his brains instead of brawn. Fires a massive bomb in it when the T-1000 is standing directly above the molten steel. And that was very cool, yes. Brain beats brute force. Although brute force helps a heck of a lot, but sometimes it reigns supreme. And it has loads of fantastic action sequences, loads of great chase sequences, yeah. And in a way, it's a shame that I saw it on TV, Terminator 2, and yes, spoiler alert, they revealed in the advert before it was on that Arnold Schwarzenegger is the goodie this time. He's the protector, not the baddie. And that's a shame because it would have been so cool if it had been a surprise, you know. Yes, so for those of you who've seen it but want to recommend it to someone else, tell them not to know who the goodie and who the baddie is, because then there's that hint of mystery. Which one's the goodie, which one's the baddie, you know. Because the narrator doesn't specify which is which in the opening sequence, you know. All the narrator says is the baddies send a killer to kill John Connor when he's a child, and the good guys send a protector. And that's it. So you don't know what they look like, you don't know which is which. And, okay, some film trivia here. Arnold Schwarzenegger was originally offered the part of the hero in the first Terminator film, the Protector, Kyle Reese. But he said playing the Terminator would be more fun. And because he played the Terminator, of course, he could play him again in the sequel, because it's a robot, so another one that looks exactly the same. So I bet he was pleased about that, because Terminator 2 proved to be his most successful film. I mean, he'd been in a number of hits throughout the 80s, but yes, that was more successful still, yeah. And it perfectly shows how James Cameron, he has said in an interview that he's fascinated by post-apocalyptic stuff, you know, the end of the world or the end of civilization. And we see this in movies like Avatar, the end of the Na'vi culture, the Titanic, you know, that's the end of a ship, you know, and everyone's doomed, they're all going to die, you know, so it's the battle for survival, the determination, yeah. And Terminator 2 is one of those films that was gripping throughout, right from start to finish, you know. But in spite of all this praise I'm giving the film, I will say a bit of criticism. The mission in the first film is to stop the machines from winning the war. But the mission in the sequel is to stop the war starting in the first place, which they can do with all their foreknowledge, knowledge of the future. The problem is, they say we must do this, we must stop Judgment Day happening before 1997. Because, of course, that was a future date when the movie was made. And now it looks so dated, you know. What they should have said was a few years from now. Yeah, don't specify the exact year, just say a few years from now. That'll work better, yeah. And so they stopped the war from ever happening. And that's why, when I heard there was going to be a sequel, I thought, isn't that a bit silly, though? I mean, the war's never going to happen. How could there be a sequel? The second one ended so perfectly. But Arnold Schwarzenegger said in an interview once, every other time he makes a guest appearance, the fans say to him, when are you going to do another Terminator movie? So, eventually, after 12 years from after the second one was made, a third one was made. Oh yes, and here's a bit of a blooper in the Terminator, or is it a blooper? You make up your own mind. When I saw Terminator 2 for the first time, yes, really enjoyed it, but there was a slight technical hitch, a slight problem. They stopped the war from ever happening, right? John Connor's father comes from the future. He's sent backwards in time to protect Sarah Connor before John Connor's even been conceived. And, of course, Kyle Reese is his father. But if the war never started, he would never go backwards in time in the first place, and therefore John Connor would never exist. But he still exists, you know, so what's that all about? That doesn't make sense. But, here's the thing. When they throw... when Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Protector, eventually ends up getting destroyed in the molten steel, and the T-1000 is destroyed, but John Connor throws the CPU chip from the original Terminator into the molten steel. He threw it in. Nobody else, he threw it in. So if he never existed, how could he exist to do that? So yes, that creates a problem, you know. I spoke to one of my friends about it once, and I said it's a blooper. If the war never started, how could John Connor ever exist? And he said, no, it's not a blooper, because there's more than one future. There's different possible futures. So in other words, Kyle Reese comes from a possible future. That's how John Connor can exist. But they've changed his future, so it'll be different. So it's not a blooper if there's more than one future, if there's several of them. It messes with your head. It doesn't quite make sense. Oh, and here's the thing. If they destroy Cyberdyne Systems, right? Destroy Miles Dyson's work, all the computers, everything. So how can the T-1000 still exist after they've done that? I mean, it is a bit strange, and yeah, well, the truth of the matter is, because nobody's invented time travel yet, we don't know how it works, and you just have to sort of make your own mind up. Oh, and a much more trivial matter, but I'll bring it up. The T-101 in the first film and second film and third film, and we see a T-101 in the fourth film. He's called the T-101, right, the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, but I read in a magazine once it's called the T-800. Now, is the T-800, is that what he's called in the third one? Or is he always a T-800 in all three? Is he a T-101 or a T-800? Is T-800 another name for a T-101? It's strange, you know. I don't know. It's I think T-101 makes more sense, you know, because that's what they call them in the film. But I don't think at any point in any of the films they say T-800. They just say that in the magazines and the books. But I don't know. Anyway, is it a good idea for there to be a Terminator 5? Well, if it's a good story, I think is the simple answer to that. You know, is any sequel a good idea? Well, if it expands the story and it does justice to the story, then yes, it's a good idea. But if it's just a silly, cheap spin-off, then don't do it. Okay, I'm running out of time, so the last thing I'll say about Terminator 2 is, yes, it was one of those movies that really made a difference. I looked at the world in a whole new light. It was brilliant story and brilliant special effects, and the T-1000 special effects still hold up today. I mean, that must have looked astonishing in the early 90s, and I know it did because I saw it in 1994, just a few years after it was made. I didn't know that the morphing techniques when the T-1000, you know, makes knives, forms them out of his hands and stuff. I didn't know you could do special effects as good as that at the time. So it was a surprise, but a welcome one. I was blown away by it. And the T-1000 much more advanced than the T-101. And but I think that's kind of the appeal of the Terminator films. The idea of something that seems so powerful and so invincible, and yet it does have a weakness. No matter how powerful an enemy is, it does have a weakness. And that's what they do in the film. They're on the run, they've got to try and stop the war, and they've got to figure out how to beat the T-1000. And I suppose, yeah, that's why I was gripped throughout the film, because I thought, what could possibly destroy that? If you put him in a cage, he can just seep out through the bars, like, because he's made of liquid metal. He can squeeze through stuff like that. He can walk through stuff. Well, he can't walk through a wall, but he can walk through the grid of a cage, you know, because that's how it works, yeah. And, but yes, so never give up hope. You know, that's another theme in the Terminator films, never give up. No matter how powerful an enemy is, he will have a weakness. Okay, that's enough from me, and I'll be back for Terminator 3.